I'm doing a PhD on history of physics at Universitat de Barcelona, and well, I will not be talking about how to become famous, sorry about that. Instead, I will be talking about how is history of science done, and perhaps I will give a couple of hints about how can you do differently on a daily basis so that future historians of science can work better on you. Okay, so how is history of science done? Basically, the only thing that you need to do history of science is reading. We read a lot of stuff, and then eventually we gather all this information and produce a logical, ordered historical account. So what exactly do we read? Well, we read first of all the publications, papers, books. This is what you actually call work. But we also read your manuscripts. Whatever notes that you would take only for yourself, we read through them, and we can gain a lot of information, a lot of detail on the creative process behind science or behind discoveries. And this is an example of a manuscript. These are the notes from Paul Ehrenfest. He was a physicist from early 20th century. And although he was really an organized man, it's not straightforward to elucidate the information in these notes, apart from the fact that they are written in German, which is usually the language is a barrier doing history of science. So back to the sources of documentation, we have also correspondence, which is really useful to gain information about the collaboration, because science is usually an international enterprise, and we need to see the connections between scientists. And finally, sometimes, but not so often, we realize that somebody is important before they die, and then we take the advantage to interview them. And this gives a lot of personal details, but on the other hand, it might be a bit biased in the sense that we as human beings tend to remember our own memories in a rather heroic way. So it's not 100% reliable. So, well, sorry. I promised that I would be giving tips about what can you change on a daily basis. I will give 2 tips. First is that you should be organized, but really extremely organized, like Sheldon Cooper on the Big Bang Theory, because then we can read through your documentation, through your sources, through everything you have, and make an idea of what's going on. And the second tip, well, before the second tip, I need to ask you a question, which is how many of you use written letters for your job? So we have 2, 3, 4, okay, not many people. What do we use? We use email instead. And as I see it, email will be one of the major challenges that history of science will be facing during this century. Mainly because of 2 reasons. First, it's free, which means that we use it a lot. We write emails for everything, and perhaps we have more than one account. What does it mean? That there is a huge pile of information that in some years to come, somebody will have to look at and extract information from it, and it might not be easy. And the second reason is that it's password protected. So what does it mean? That maybe they will not even be able to read your emails. So my second tip is please choose weak passwords so that eventually future historians of science will be able to hack your email accounts and read through your mails, only for working purposes, of course. So, well, that was my talk, but before leaving, I want to give you a final piece of advice, the taking home message. And this should be that, well, you should actually forget everything I just said and focus on working hard and producing great things. And eventually, you will discover something that will be worth doing history about. Whoever does that history, that's their problem. Thank you.